Nothing in this podcast or on our website should be construed as medical advice. Consult your healthcare provider for your individual nutritional and medical needs. The information presented is based on our research and is strictly that of the author and not necessarily those of any professional group or other individual.
Hi, I'm Sue Becker from Bread Beckers. Welcome to Sue's Healthy Minutes. I'm so excited you've joined me today, and I hope this episode encourages you and allows you to find the answers you have been praying for the health of you and your family. It's garden season, so today I'm going to deviate just slightly from my usual nutritional talks, but only a slight deviation. I love summer. Maybe not the heat so much, but I love garden season. I love all the fresh produce that becomes available, whether you personally have a garden or whether you enjoy getting fresh produce from your friends, roadside stands, or from one of the many popular local farmers markets. But what do we do with all this extra fresh fruits and vegetables that are available this time of year? Certainly, we can share with others, but the Bible tells us to go to the ant. Proverbs 6, verses 6 through 8 tells us to observe the ways of the ant and to be wise. That although the ant has no overseer, ruler, or boss telling her what to do, she prepares her food in the summer and brings in her provisions of food in the harvest season for the coming winter. There are many options for preserving our summer produce, such as canning, freezing, making jam and jelly, but I do believe my favorite is food dehydration, especially for some foods. But that was not always the case with me. Whenever I teach on food dehydration, I like to begin with a funny story about myself. When we first decided to start Bread Beckers way back in 1992, I reached out to the grain mill company to see about becoming a distributor of the mill we were using. They were delighted to have a new business on board and explained to me their opening order requirements. They wanted us to purchase one of each of the machines they offered so that as distributors, we would be familiar with all of their products. The mill we already own, so that was easy. The mixer, which is now the Ankish room that we still carry today, I was very excited about getting, as the capacity would be 3 times that of my KitchenAid that I was currently using. And making all my bread for my growing family of 6 children, I was actually wondering how fast they could get that mixer to me. The last machine, however, that they mentioned was a food dehydrator, to which I replied, I'm not interested in food dehydration and would never want to sell a dehydrator. They repeated that I would need to purchase at least one of their dehydrators. The conversation went back and forth for a few moments with me repeatedly telling them that I did not want a dehydrator, that I just wanted to teach people how to make bread from freshly milled grains and the amazing health benefits of doing so. In frustration, I finally declared that I really was not interested in a food dehydrator and that only hippies and food preppers dehydrate food. Little did I know. By this point in the conversation, we had moved to a first name basis, and the representative boldly declared to me, Sue, just buy the dehydrator. If you never use it, fine, but it is really a small investment for starting a business. I agreed and ordered the dehydrator along with some extra mills and the amazing mixer. Now, Brad and I were huge gardeners at the time, and since I was now the owner of a food dehydrator, I did a little research and I discovered how easy, nutritious, and versatile food dehydration can be. And by the end of our garden season, we personally owned and operated not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 of these dehydrators. And I learned that I absolutely loved dehydrating our garden produce. The oldest form of food preservation is dehydration, long before canning or freezing were options. But even today, with these methods available to us, I prefer dehydration for some foods over canning or freezing. And there are actually many advantages to food dehydration over these other methods. I said I was only going to slightly deviate from my normal nutritional discussions, and that's because nutritionally, with food dehydration, about 97% of the nutrients are retained, whereas in freezing, it's about 60%, and with canning, it's only about 40%. With only the water removed, dehydrated foods dried at temperatures below 112 degrees even retain their vital enzymes. Flavors are enhanced due to their concentration once the water is removed. So any food, such as fruit that contains natural sugars that are remotely sweet when fresh, will be even more sweet and flavorful when dehydrated. Dehydrated foods can be a healthy, natural alternative to the unhealthy, sugar-filled, processed snack foods. And kids really love these delicious snacks that you can feel good about giving them. While it might be difficult at times to have fresh fruit or even vegetables always available, buying in bulk during peak season and dehydrating can be the answer to having these nutritious foods always on hand. For instance, your abundant crop of zucchini can easily be grated and dehydrated instead of frozen for later use in, say, zucchini bread or muffins. While nutrition is a big plus in food dehydration, another advantage over canning or freezing is preparation and storage. It really takes very little preparation or equipment to get food ready for dehydration. Basically, slicing, grating, or chopping the food are all the preparation needed and is so safe, even young children can help you load or unload the dehydrator. The way you prepare the food will depend mostly on how you plan to use it after it's dried. The time it takes for foods to dehydrate will depend on the type of food, its moisture content, as well as how thick the food is cut. In general, if you would peel a fruit or vegetable to use it or eat it, then you'll want to peel it before dehydrating it. But if the peel is edible, such as apple peels, don't throw them away. Dry them, and once dry, powder the dried apple peels using a blender. A great way to make your own apple peel powder that can be easily added to smoothies or simply mixed with water and drink. Studies have shown that regularly consuming apple peel powder has significant health benefits, such as reducing overall inflammation and specifically joint pain in just a matter of weeks. Remember the saying, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. Cucumbers are just another abundant crop that I love to dehydrate and powder. I simply grate the cucumbers, peels and all, spread them out on the dehydrator tray to dehydrate. Once dry, I powder them in a blender and add a tablespoon or so of the powder to a mixture of mayonnaise, sour cream, or yogurt to make a delicious creamy cucumber or tzatziki dip. The flavor is so fresh, and this is so convenient to have on hand. And how about those salad greens or fresh spinach that often go bad in the refrigerator before you use them? Why not dehydrate them as soon as you purchase them and powder them to add to a smoothie or your favorite green drink? 1 tablespoon of that spinach powder that stores for months without refrigeration is equal to about 1 cup of fresh raw spinach. For other fruits and vegetables, you'll just want to cut or slice them the size and thickness you want them to be if you're going to use them fresh. Though they will shrink when dehydrated, they will rehydrate right back to their original size when you're ready to use them in a recipe. For example, your yellow squash, instead of freezing for later use in, say, a squash casserole, simply slice it to the thickness you want it to be, dehydrate it. When ready to use, simply rehydrate it by covering it with some water for about 10 or 15 minutes. Drain before using. If you're going to use your dehydrated food in a specific recipe, you may want to measure the fresh amount needed before dehydrating so that you know how much you will use once it is dehydrated. For example, 1 cup of grated fresh zucchini is what I add to my basic muffin recipe when making zucchini muffins. So before dehydrating zucchini for the first time, I measured 1 cup of grated zucchini and found that it dehydrated down to just 1/4 of a cup. So now I know that I need a 1/4 cup of dried zucchini to rehydrate into the equivalent of 1 cup fresh zucchini. I also have a recipe for a garden harvest bread that calls for grated apple, zucchini, and carrots. I grate the amounts called for in the recipe all together and spread them out on one tray in the dehydrator. And once dried, I store in small food storage bags labeled for one recipe. Makes it so easy to grab and use by simply pouring some hot water over the mixture while I get my other ingredients together, then simply drain and add it to the batter. Speaking of storage, this is another advantage to dehydrated foods versus canning or freezing. With the water removed, most dehydrated fruits and vegetables can be stored for months and even years if stored properly. Storage can be as simple as any type of plastic food storage bag or glass jar. These can be vacuum sealed for longer storage to prevent, say, discoloration or moisture absorption, but it's not necessary for shorter storage times. Dehydrated foods don't really spoil when stored. Just over time, they may darken or lose some flavor. They are still safe to use. There is really no threat of botulism or food poisoning organisms with dehydrated foods since the moisture is removed and you have not created an anaerobic condition as in canning. I usually just store my dried foods in a Ziploc type bag, then keep the bags in one of my food grade buckets with a gamma lid. I have a bucket for my dried fruits and herbs and a bucket for my vegetables and one for my more pungent produce like dried onions. Dehydrated foods take up very little storage space when compared to freezing and canning. Canning jars are heavy and bulky and take up a fair amount of space. Once opened, canned foods must be used or refrigerated to prevent spoilage. Not so with dehydrated foods. Your storage container can be opened and used out of as needed as long as you're careful not to introduce moisture into the container. When we first started dehydrating, we had a huge garden with nearly 100 tomato plants. We learned to dehydrate the tomatoes, and once good and dry, we would then powder them with a blender or a food processor. We could then store the equivalent of 100 tomatoes in 1 quart jar. It would have easily taken 20 quart canning jars to can that many tomatoes. To use, we simply added enough water to about 1/4 cup of the tomato powder to make a sauce to our desired consistency, along with some herbs and spices. Again, the flavor was incredible. Freezing foods has some of the same disadvantages as canning. Some foods lose considerable flavor, water, and texture when thawed, and certainly don't travel well. I can take my bag of dehydrated zucchini with me on trips to make delicious bread or muffins while away. Frozen foods are bulky and they require electricity to constantly operate the freezer. And with freezing, there is always the chance of food loss due to power outages or freezer failure. Not so with dehydration. And bottom line, most food dehydrators cost just pennies per hour to operate. Preparing foods for dehydration doesn't take a lot of time or equipment, but there are a few tools that I have found that are invaluable. A good sharp knife is a must. Remember, a sharp knife is safer to use than a dull one. And personally, I think the ceramic knives by Kyocera are amazing. A good grater, either a handheld box grater, which I love the 4-sided etched box grater by QueasyPro that we carry at Becker's, or the Anchorshroom vegetable slicer shredder attachment. It makes slicing or shredding so fast and easy and can be grated or sliced directly on the dehydrator tray. A good blender is a must-have as well, and I love my blender attachment to the Anchorshroom mixer. It is perfect for blending up leftover fruit or fresh fruit for those wonderful fruit roll-ups or fruit leathers that kids just really seem to enjoy. For apple season, the Apple Master Apple Peeler Core Slicer is an invaluable tool to prepare the apples exactly how you want them. Peeled, cored, sliced with the peel on or off, but don't forget to save the peel. And last but not least, a good mandolin slicer. And the PL8 Professional Mandolin is the best I have found. It is completely self-contained with integrated blades, so no loose parts. It's easy to clean and it folds down for storage. It's a must-have for dehydration. You can find all of these tools and more at breadbeckers.com, along with my favorite food dehydrator, the Excalibur 9 tray. For more dehydration how-tos and great ideas and tips, please go to our Bread Beckers YouTube channel and check out our class video, Dehydration Basics. You can also find the direct link to our channel and the class on breadbeckers.com. The versatility of both dehydrating food and using and enjoying the food you have dehydrated are nearly limitless. Dehydrated fruits, vegetables, and beef jerky make delicious, healthy snacks that are lightweight, require no refrigeration, so can be easily added to lunch boxes or backpacks for hiking or other outdoor sports. They are clean, healthy snacks that are perfect when traveling, as they don't leave a trail of crumbs or sticky messes in your car. But dehydrated foods aren't just for snacking. Chopped, dried vegetables such as carrot, onions, and celery can easily be added to soups or stews or other dishes that will save you time in the kitchen when preparing. And many leftover prepared dishes such as rice and beans can be dehydrated and used later as a ready-to-eat meal by simply adding water and heating. For more ideas on how to dehydrate all kinds of foods and even meals, you might want to check out the Dehydrator Bible, also offered at breadbeckers.com. There are still some foods that I prefer to can as well as freeze, but food dehydration is invaluable for food preservation. And like I said, the possibilities are limitless. Dehydrated foods are simple to make, easy to store, easy to use, and best of all, nutritious and delicious. So have fun with this. It's definitely worth the investment. I hope you've been inspired today to go to the ant and prepare. Until next time, this is Sue Becker from Bread Beckers with Sue's Healthy Minutes.
Sue's Healthy Minutes podcast has been a presentation by the Bread Beckers Incorporated, located in Woodstock, Georgia. For more information, store hours, and learning opportunities, visit breadbeckers.com and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast and never miss an episode. Share this with 2 friends who would benefit from this information, and be sure to join us again next week for more of Sue's Healthy Minutes.